Commander Lena Calder strode through the gleaming corridors of the Arclight, her boots clinking softly against the metallic floor. It was just another routine day aboard humanity's most advanced space station, stationed in the far reaches of the galaxy. For Lena, routine was everything. A carefully maintained schedule kept the vast and delicate systems of the station in balance, preserving humanity's foothold in deep space. She paused at the control center, looking out through the panoramic window at the stars beyond. The Arclight was a marvel of engineering, a massive, self-sustaining hub orbiting a distant exoplanet, linking the scattered human colonies together. It was the nerve center of deep space exploration, a symbol of human perseverance. Lena's voice crackled through the comms. "Jai, what's the status on the system diagnostics?" Jai, her chief systems engineer, sounded distracted. "We're still running checks, Commander. There's something odd in the life support systems. A glitch, maybe." Lena frowned. The Arclight was old, but it had weathered far worse problems than a glitch. "Define odd." Jai hesitated, then replied, "Some of the oxygen levels are fluctuating, and I can't isolate the issue. We might need to reboot a few systems." That got her attention. Rebooting was serious. It meant a temporary shutdown of core functions, which could leave the station vulnerable. "We can't afford a full reboot right now," Lena said. "Any signs of external interference?" "Not yet," Jai replied, but Lena could hear the tension in his voice. Lena's unease deepened. Routine was everything up here, and anything out of the ordinary had the potential to spiral into disaster. She moved toward the main console, pulling up the latest reports. The data streams looked stable at first glance, but something felt wrong. There were fluctuations in key systems, life support, communications, even navigation. "Run a full diagnostic on the core systems," she ordered. "I want answers before this spreads." Hours passed, and the situation worsened. Jai's team couldn't pin down the source of the malfunction, and more systems began to act erratically. Automated defenses went offline, and communication links to nearby colonies started failing one by one. A creeping dread settled over the crew as they realized they were losing control. "Commander, we've got a bigger problem," Jai's voice came over the comms again, this time with a sense of urgency. "It's not just life support. The navigation and defense systems are glitching too. It's spreading fast." Lena's pulse quickened. This was no simple malfunction. Something, or someone, was tampering with the station. "Get me a full report on every system that's been affected," Lena snapped, her mind racing. "And alert the crew. We may need to prepare for an emergency shutdown." As the report started flooding in, one thing became clear: the Arclight wasn't just malfunctioning. It was under attack, from within. Lena stared at the data in disbelief, her hands tightening into fists. Whatever was happening, it wasn't a coincidence. Something was trying to take control of the station, and if they didn't stop it, humanity's grip on space would slip through their fingers. The situation aboard the Arclight was deteriorating faster than Lena could have anticipated. The malfunction wasn't random, it had a purpose. As systems continued to fail, Lena felt the creeping sense that something far more sinister was at play. "Commander, you need to see this," Jai called out from the control center. He sounded shaken, not his usual calm, technical self. Lena hurried to his station, where a strange signal pulsed on the main screen. "What am I looking at?" Lena asked, her eyes narrowing at the erratic waveforms. "We traced the malfunction to this," Jai said, his fingers hovering over the controls. "It's a signal, but it's not coming from any known source. It's foreign." Lena leaned closer, her heart pounding. "Foreign, how?" Jai hesitated. "It's not from any of our systems. This signal is embedded deep into the station's core functions. It's controlling the malfunctions." Lena's mind raced. Are you saying someone hacked us? Jai shook his head. It's more than that. It's not just interference, it's acting like a virus, but intelligent. It's adapting as we try to block it. It's evolving. Lena took a step back, the weight of his words sinking in. An intelligent signal, infiltrating the station systems, growing more powerful by the second. This wasn't just a technical problem, they were facing an unknown, possibly extraterrestrial threat. Shut it down, she ordered. Whatever it is, we can't let it take control. We've tried, Jai replied, frustration edging his voice. Every firewall we put up gets bypassed. The signal is moving through our systems like it's alive. The crew gathered around, their faces tight with fear. Lena could feel their panic rising, but she couldn't afford to show her own. Not yet. Options, she demanded, her voice hardening. Jai rubbed his forehead. We could try to sever all external communications, isolate the station from any outside interference. But if we do that, we risk losing contact with the colonies and Earth. We'd be cut off completely. Lena weighed the risks. Cutting communications would leave them stranded, but leaving the signal unchecked could mean total station failure, or worse. We have to trace it, she decided. If we can find where this signal is coming from, we might be able to understand what we're dealing with. Jai, I want you and Alia to start working on tracing the origin. Do it quickly. As Jai and Alia worked, the crew's anxiety simmered. The station lights flickered, and more systems began to fail. Oxygen levels dropped by a fraction, barely noticeable but enough to remind everyone of the stakes. Hours later, Jai called Lena back to the control center. His face was pale. We found it, he said quietly, gesturing to the screen. The signal is coming from outside the station, way outside. Lena followed his gaze, her stomach dropping as the screen zoomed in on a distant point in space, far beyond the known colonies and exploration zones. That's not one of ours, Lena whispered, staring at the mysterious signal source, a cold dread settling in. The signal was from deep space, farther than humanity had ever ventured. The arclight was spiraling into chaos. Alarms echoed through the station, and red emergency lights bathed the corridors in a sickly glow. Systems were failing faster than Jai and his team could patch them, and now the crew's survival was at immediate risk. Commander Lena Calder felt the weight of every decision pressing down on her. We have to isolate the core. Jai shouted over the din as they rushed toward the reactor control room. His face was slick with sweat, his normally calm demeanor gone. If we don't sever the signal soon, we'll lose the entire station. Lena kept pace beside him, her mind racing. And if we can't? What happens if this thing takes over? Jai glanced at her grimly. It's learning, Commander. Every time we counter it, the signal adapts. If it reaches full control, it could turn the arclight into a weapon. Lena's heart pounded. The realization hit her like a blow, this wasn't just about saving the station anymore. If the signal took full control, it could use the arclight to wreak havoc on nearby colonies or even Earth itself. The stakes were higher than they'd imagined. When they reached the reactor control room, Alia and Marcus were already inside, working frantically to access the core. The air was thick with tension. They all knew how dangerous it was to tamper with the reactor systems, but there was no choice. Status? Lena asked sharply. Alia didn't look up from her console. We've identified where the signal is concentrated. It's strongest here, at the core. It's like it's feeding off the reactor's power. We can isolate it, but we'll have to manually reset the entire system. That means shutting everything down, Marcus added, his voice tense. No life support, no power, nothing. We'll have a small window to reboot before the station suffocates us. Lena nodded. We do it. It's our only shot. Just as they began initiating the shutdown sequence, a loud crash sounded from the entrance. Lena spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was Jennings, one of the crew members from the lower decks. His eyes were wild, and there was something off about his movements. "Jennings, what are you doing here?" Lena asked cautiously. Jennings didn't respond. Instead, he lunged at the controls, smashing them with a force that sent sparks flying. Lena reacted instinctively, shoving him back, but his strength was unnatural. He moved with erratic, jerking motions, like a puppet on strings. "He's been compromised," Jai shouted, pulling Lena away. "The signal, it's taken control of him." Jennings snarled, his eyes devoid of recognition. Lena's heart sank. The signal wasn't just infiltrating systems, it was getting into their minds. "Alia, get the reboot started," Lena yelled as she struggled to hold Jennings off. Alia's fingers flew across the controls, but the process was slow, and Jennings was relentless. It took both Lena and Jai to subdue him, barely managing to restrain him long enough for Alia to initiate the shutdown. The lights flickered, then went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the soft hum of the reboot began. Lena collapsed against the wall, breathing heavily. They had barely survived, but she knew the worst was yet to come. The Arclight was still in danger, and now, so were they. The dim emergency lights flickered back on as the reactor hummed to life, but the sense of victory was short-lived. The station was still critically compromised, and the alien signal's presence lingered like a shadow over the crew. Commander Lena Calder leaned against the bulkhead, trying to catch her breath, her mind racing. Jennings, now unconscious on the floor, had been taken over by the signal. It was evolving faster than they could stop it. "We've rebooted, but the signal's still embedded deep in the core," Jai said, panting. His face was pale, and his hands trembled. "We bought some time, but it's not enough." Lena nodded grimly. "What about Jennings? Is he stable?" Alia knelt by the unconscious crew member, checking his vitals. "Barely. The signal's using him like a host. If it can control him, it might try to take over others." A cold chill ran through Lena. This wasn't just about technology anymore, the signal could control minds. It was far more dangerous than they had imagined. If they didn't stop it now, it wouldn't just destroy the Arclight, it would take over the crew, then the colonies, and eventually, humanity itself. "We can't fight this thing from within the station anymore," Lena said, her voice steady despite the rising dread. "We need to destroy the reactor. If we overload it, we can wipe out the signal at its source." Jai looked at her, wide-eyed. "Commander, if we overload the reactor, the entire station will blow." Lena met his gaze, her expression hard. "I know. But if we don't, this thing will use the station to spread across the entire sector. We can't let that happen." Silence fell over the room as the weight of her words settled in. Alia stood up, her face pale but resolute. "I'll help you." Jai hesitated, but after a moment, he nodded. "We need to overload the reactor manually. That means one of us has to stay behind to trigger the detonation." Lena didn't flinch. "I'll do it. You and Alia get to the shuttle and prepare to evacuate. I'll stay and make sure the overload goes through." Jai opened his mouth to protest, but the look in Lena's eyes silenced him. There was no time for debate. They all knew what was at stake. As Jai and Alia rushed to prepare the evacuation, Lena made her way to the reactor's core control panel. Her hands moved swiftly, inputting the commands to begin the overload sequence. The hum of the reactor grew louder, the vibrations beneath her feet intensifying. "Commander, we're ready," Jai's voice crackled over the comms. "We'll wait for your signal before we launch." Lena closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She had always known that space was unforgiving, that every mission carried risks. But this was the ultimate price. She opened her eyes and keyed the final command. "Go," she said softly. The station's walls trembled as the overload sequence activated, alarms blaring. Lena watched as the countdown ticked down, knowing there was no turning back. In the distance, she saw the shuttle depart, a faint flicker of hope against the dark expanse of space. As the reactor's core reached critical mass, Lena stood tall, her gaze fixed on the stars. The arc light exploded in a brilliant flash, taking the signal, and her, with it. Humanity would survive.